Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider. My name is Nate Eaton. Today is Thursday, August 7th, 2025. So glad you are with me tonight. I am really anxious and excited for you to hear my interview tonight with Brad Bradley. He is the brother of Amy Bradley, the center of the #1 show on Netflix, Amy Bradley is Missing. Amy Bradley was 23 years old when she went on a cruise with her family, the Royal Caribbean International cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas. It was late March of 1998 when she disappeared. Her brother was there on the ship, her parents were there on the ship, and what happened to her remains a mystery to this day. It was big in the news back in the late 90s when this happened, and then it kind of went away, and now it is back at the center of international news about what happened to this woman. Did she fall into the ocean? Did she jump into the ocean? Was she smuggled off the ship? Is she currently a victim of human trafficking? Is she dead? All of those are possibilities. And tonight we're going to drill down with Brad Bradley as we talk about this case that really, if you haven't seen the series, check it out because it's one of those, it's 3 episodes. I watched them all in one sitting and I had so many questions at the end. And I'm so glad Brad agreed to talk with me. Keep in mind your questions. If you have any, send them to us, questions@east.idahonews.com. We may be able to get Brad back and I can ask him your questions maybe next week or in the next few weeks, but send them in to us and let us know. And with that, let's jump straight to my interview with Brad Bradley. A lot of people were first introduced to this story weeks ago when this program came out on Netflix. And there's a lot of people that still haven't seen it. In fact, just today in our office, we were talking about it. Can you give me just kind of a base overview of what happened to your sister when your family was on this cruise?
Well, we don't know. We have theories and we have evidence that points in certain directions, but obviously no way to know exactly. We got on the cruise in San Juan, Puerto Rico. The first day or so of the cruise was at sea as the ship sailed to Aruba. We were having a great time. Spent time at the pool, at the casino, hanging out with my parents and their work associates. And on Aruba, we got off and spent the day. And you may have heard me talk about us getting lost in the desert that day and getting burned up by the sun. But we finally found our way back to the boat. Came in, took showers, grabbed a nap, and then there was to be a pool party that night. Towards the end of which the boat would leave Aruba. So spent the time at the pool party. Basically, at the end of it, everybody that wanted to stay up went up to the only place that was still open, which was called the Viking Lounge, kind of like the dance club, nightclub area, and spent a couple hours up there. Um, uh, you've probably seen the footage of Amy dancing with who we consider to be the prime suspect that night, shot by the videographer that was working with video editor Chris Fenwick. And I got back to my room about 5 minutes before Amy did. We both came out onto the balcony. Actually, I was out there before she got there. She came out and joined me. And then roughly 4 a.m., knowing that we had to be up in 2 or 3 hours, I decided that it was time to head to bed. So Amy had told me she didn't feel very well and that she was, the wind outside felt nice to her, so she was going to sleep on the chaise lounge on the balcony. So I came in, shut the door behind me, went to bed after telling her I loved her, which is the last thing I ever said to her. And my dad woke up at 5:30 a.m. and the upper half of her was blocked by the curtains on the window, but he could see her legs that she was sitting in the chair, laying in the chaise lounge rather. And then he looked at his watch and said, well, we're going to be up in 30, 45 minutes anyway, getting ready to leave for the island, so I'll just get her up when we get up. So we woke up again at 6 a.m. and the balcony door, which I had previously closed, was open, about a foot or so. and she was gone. So I don't know how much detail you want me to go into as far as
Let,
continuing to tell what
let me,
happened.
yeah, let me ask you some questions. That was a good synopsis. You all were sharing the same room,
Correct.
and you mentioned the person at the disco in at the club,
Hmm.
and then the video footage that happened to catch your sister there. That person in the club, did he know which room you were in?
Don't know. I don't know.
Okay. And one of the key parts of the docuseries is that there was time stamps every time the key card went in and out of the door, right?
Yes, sir.
So did you each have like your own key?
We did.
And was there, of course, those type of keys don't track when people leave there, but they record when people go in. Was there any sort of movement or not movement, but any sort of record of the keys being used between those hours of when she got back from the dance club to when your dad woke up and she was gone?
Not, you mean our keys or Alistair?
Anybody's keys, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the full extent of the key card data that the FBI has. From what I understand, although Yellow, in his most recent interview with James Renner on YouTube that was recorded about 8 or 9 months ago, he claims that he was in his room by 1 a.m. that night. And the key card data shows that he entered his room at 3:35. So he and I both actually entered our respective rooms at apparently the same exact time. Amy came in 5 minutes later. Now, there is a record, and I don't know whether it's exactly 9 a.m., but roughly 9 a.m., it shows Alistair Douglas re enter his room. Between 7:30 and 8 a.m., after we had all gone up after discovering Amy was not in the room, and the panic was building as we spent 30 minutes, an hour looking for her. Man, I lost my train of thought.
Oh no, you're saying
So what I was saying is between 7:30 and 8, I had finally, after I kind of exhausted searching all the public areas that I knew of, I sat down by a pool at the edge of by a table at the edge of the pool. And Yellow walked up to me that morning right then and said, "Hey, man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister."
mm,
Now, at the time, no announcements had been made. I believe my parents notified the purser's desk at 7:35 a.m. But let me back up a second. So when my dad first left the room, he went to look for himself, whether to see whether he could find her before he woke my mom and I. That was about 6 a.m. And he looked for, it's estimated, 45 minutes or so. On his way back to the room, he ran into the chief of security, who just so happened to be standing in our hallway about 20, 30 feet from our door
mm,
on that entire ship. Size of a city, hundreds of rooms, thousands of people. The chief of security was right there in our hallway. So my dad walks over to him and says, excuse me, I just wanted to let you know, woke up this morning and my daughter's not in the room. I've looked all around, and I can't find her. So the reason I tell that part is because Yellow, in his latest interview, states that security called him in his room at 7 a.m. and asked him if he had a girl in his room. And I think I'd have to look back at it, but I'm pretty sure he says the girl that you were in the club with, that like security knew who he was with. My dad never mentioned Yellow's name to the security officer at that time because he didn't know to, he didn't put anything together yet. So then the last interesting fact about that is that the chief security officer's final report, he totally excludes the interaction with my dad in the hallway where he let him know we couldn't find her, and states that the first he heard of it was at 7:35 when the purser's desk contacted him about a quote unquote dislocated passenger.
mm.
So a
But
little
yet your father had spoken to him previous
a half an hour before, yeah.
30 minutes. And
Yeah.
tell everybody who Yellow is for people that aren't familiar with it.
Yellow, also known as Alistair Douglas, and I think he's changed his name now again to Christopher Douglas. Is Was the bass player in the hired band on the ship kind of a, I don't know, I think you call it a calypso band, steel kettle drum and all that kind of stuff. He was the bass player for the band that was performing on the ship during certain periods.
Right. And not to give the whole series away if you haven't seen it, but his daughter actually calls him in the series and asks him about this, and he denies that he had any involvement.
Yeah, and
Right.
she's spoken to her a number of times since the show came out. I connected with her on TikTok actually, and she goes through his interview that he did on YouTube, and says he's lying through the entire thing. And so his daughter contacted us years ago via voicemail to share with us that she thought he was involved and had something to do with it. Um, she wasn't born at the time. Her mother was actually pregnant with her when he came home from that cruise. Um, I suppose, her story has come secondhand from her mother telling her these things. But she, recently shared with me that Yellow was bragging about a bunch of money that he had had when he came home from the cruise. He was very different, ended up leaving her mother, and had pictures of multiple women in his suitcase.
Mm.
When my mom and Amy went to get our formal pictures after we had taken them that night, uh, only her pictures were missing from the photo gallery. And the person that worked the photo gallery said, "Oh, they're right." When they walked up, he's like, "Oh, they're right over here. I remember." And he walks over there. There's a blank spot, and he's like, "Well, that's weird. Would anybody in your family or your party have got these pictures for you?" And my mom's like, "No, I don't know why that would be." So they had to actually reprint Amy's photos so that we could have copies of them. So there's a lot of strange,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah. I didn't know that.
yeah, the first two eyewitnesses of this entire case, excuse me, two girls named Crystal and Lori. Um, when my parents and I got back on the boat after having gotten off in Curacao to wait for the conclusion of the search that was ongoing in the water, once it was confirmed to us that she was not in the water, we got back on the boat. The morning we were that morning, we none of us were sleeping. We're an absolute mess. My mom and I are trying to potentially retrace Amy's steps as to, okay, we leave the room, we turn this way, where would she have gone? And we're trying to think through it and make something happen desperately. And these two girls come literally running up to us. They were breathless, they were frantic, and they explained that they had seen Amy go up the glass elevator, into the nightclub between 5:30 and 6 a.m. There was a third eyewitness that wasn't mentioned in the docuseries named Elizabeth, who testified in a grand jury in Richmond 20 plus years ago, that apparently was on some antibiotic that didn't allow her to be in the sun during the cruise. So she spent the majority of her time in that lounge because of the surrounding windows and the view of the pool and the people in the water and the island. So she was in there very early that morning, says that she saw Yellow and Amy get off the elevator from inside, go up to the upper level where Amy and Yellow were sitting when I left the disco that night or early that morning. Yellow went down to the bar, fixed her a dark drink, handed it to her, and they walked further into the back area where she could no longer see them. And then she testified that a young girl who she suspected to be 18 or 19 years old comes out of the back of the bar or the kitchen yelling, "Senorita Kidnap, Senorita Kidnap." Now we're trying to find the bartender. We're trying to find this Elizabeth. We've not been able to at this point, and we have no idea who the young girl who she claims said the kidnap part is. So this whole case hinges on somebody who knows something coming forward. And
Wow.
yeah, so there's a lot of evidence against him in the series. I'll say one last thing on this before your next question.
Yeah.
Um, the FBI agent on the series, you'll hear if you go back or maybe you remember saying that unfortunately, quote, they were unable to verify or corroborate the girl's time frame to prove that they were out at that time and all that kind of thing. We've since spoken to the mother of one of the two girls, who let the two girls into their room, opening the door from the inside just after 6 a.m. And the mother maintains that she has never been contacted or interviewed by FBI in an effort to corroborate the girl's story. So they
Oh
dropped
man.
the ball. They dropped the ball very early on. Last week, my mom and dad had an hour and a half phone call with that FBI agent, and she literally said to them, "Mr. and Mrs. Bradley, we just don't have any evidence Amy left the room." So that tells me two things. My mom said, the F you don't. You got the two girls outside seeing him go up the elevator. You got the one girl inside the club seeing him come off the elevator. And you never interviewed the mother who could corroborate that they were in fact out until that time. So what that statement from the FBI agent says to me is that they believe nothing else other than she either fell off or jumped off, and they've been sitting on their hands for 25 years, 27 years.
Well, and you could raise a counter argument if they say that we don't have any evidence that she left the room. Well, you could say you don't have any evidence that she stayed in the room either. I mean, how can you say
Yeah,
that if you don't talk to those people?
it's
Um,
yeah, frustrating.
it's got to be maddening. And to remind people, we're going back 20 years here, where I would imagine there's not a lot of cameras on the boat, if any.
Well, they had cameras. Definitely, they got cameras recording in the casino. You can rest assured.
Right, casino. Right, maybe
But
maybe the major areas.
yeah, we asked them, to please review the footage, especially the cameras that point down the sides of the boat that would alert anyone if someone went overboard. And they told us, never been able to verify if this is true or not, but they told us that none of those cameras, they were just monitoring. There are no recordings.
Hmm. So to set the timeline, let's say Yellow had something to do with it. You guys were in the club till you said about 3 o'clock, 3:30,
Well, I left the club at about 3 o'clock to go sit outside and talk to a couple of girls I had met in the club. So we're
but
sitting
not at your room. You were talking outside.
on the upper deck on some lounge chairs. So we're
Okay.
sitting out there talking,
You
and
go back and beat Amy back to the room by about 5 minutes.
I do. So when I left the disco, that's kind of an antiquated term to use. Whatever, the
Right.
dance. I knew where Amy was sitting, so I looked up there and I'm like, I'm gonna be out here, and so she waved me on. Thinking back, I've always regretted not having more of a protective mindset. You have a very much of a false sense of security on that boat. She was always my big bad sister that didn't need anybody to protect her, and I've been slammed online for why the hell would you leave your sister alone? I don't know. I can't. I kick myself for that one. I'm just. Uh, that I take some solace in the fact that she did come back to the room that night, because if she had never returned to the room, I couldn't have lived with that fact. Uh,
Right.
but I left the club at around 3 to go outside. When I was out there, I actually saw Crystal and Lori, who I had met previously. Crystal and Lori knew Amy and I. We had spent some time talking. Yellow had flirted with Crystal and Lori. They knew who he was. We were all kind of hanging out a little bit. So when I decided to go back to the room, no idea why I didn't go back in and say, "Hey, Amy, come with me." But nonetheless, I go back 3:35, 3:40. She comes out, and then again, key card data shows Yellow go in his room at 3:35. Although now he's saying he was in his room at 1 a.m. He says when the ship's security called him at 7 a.m. to ask him about the girl, they told him to stay in his room. Meanwhile, remember 7:30 to 8 a.m. he's on the pool deck telling me he's sorry to hear about my sister before we'd said
Before
anything to.
public knowledge. So she comes back in, and it's possible then when you went back to bed, she then left the room to meet up with Yellow in that time period.
Yeah, meet up with Yellow or someone. We had spoken to one of the bartenders in the casino whose name was Caitlin. And we had Amy and her actually, they were talking about meeting up after she got off work. Now, I personally never saw her after that. I don't know if Caitlin was one of the people at the table up on the upper level of the balcony because there was 3 or 4 people up there sitting with Amy, and I don't know who they were other than Yellow, but there were a couple other people. So potentially, because I can't make sense of why she would have gone out to meet Yellow. Um, especially after on the balcony, she tells me that he tried to touch her chest, and she kind of told him, I don't think so, buddy. She didn't make a big deal of it and kind of brushed it off. But it doesn't make sense to me that she would have agreed to go meet him at somewhere between 5:30 and 6 a.m. So I think she made plans to meet somebody and either ran into him or it was kind of a setup type situation. I don't know what. But I believe that he handed her off to someone in the back of that club. They took her down into crew quarters. The security report later tells us that the crew was in charge of searching their own cabins during the search for her, which obviously makes no sense in a potentially criminal situation when you suspect crew are involved. The other thing that's important, I think, that wasn't in the documentary is when Yellow came up to me that morning and told me, "Sorry to hear about your sister." He next said, "Well, what happened? When's the last time you saw her?" And so I started going through. Well, I left, the club, and He's like, "Hold on a second. I want my brother to hear this." So he walks about 50 feet to my right, his left, as he's standing there facing me. There's a table with 3 or 4 or 5 guys sitting at it, which I assumed were his bandmates. I don't know who they were. He brings one of them back over and he says, "Okay, all right, go ahead." So I proceed, and at the time, not thinking clearly, obviously, I'm, kind of freaking out and don't know what to do. But pretty much I'm convinced I gave them an accurate timeline that they could both agree on if they were to be questioned or interviewed.
Mm.
So I don't know who that man was, whether it was his roommate or just another bandmate or another. I don't know, but I've always found that to be pretty strange.
That whole series of events with him that morning just is bizarre. The fact that for him to say sorry about your sister and then try to get a witness there.
Yeah,
Now, Brad, there's going to be people watching that are first hearing about this, and they're going to say, "Well, she jumped. She jumped off the balcony, or she maybe fell."
yeah.
Why is that a legitimate, point of view
Uh,
argument?
no, sir. So I'll address the 3 different ways she could have ended up in the water and tell you why each one of them isn't true. So she didn't jump off. Zero chance. Amy was very happy. I know the Netflix series tried to, you know, paint her as this struggling lesbian with trouble in her relationships. Amy was very happy. In fact, she had a boyfriend for several months leading up to the cruise, who was interviewed for 5 hours by the production staff, and he was completely excluded from the story.
Was
So
he was he on the cruise or was he back home?
but he went back down with us to search for her a couple weeks later when I went down with him and my dad and my uncle. We went back down to search and hand out flyers and hold a press conference and do anything and everything we could. So back to the point, she was happy. She had recently graduated college. She had a good paying job at a local steakhouse where she and her boyfriend at the time both worked. She had just gotten a brand new apartment. She had plans to start a new job with my uncle's computer company that he owned. She had just gotten a brand new English bulldog puppy named Bailey that she had wanted her whole life. She was writing postcards to friends about what they were going to do when they got home. She was buying gifts for people. She was taking pictures to enter a photography contest when she got home, and she was planning on making a photo collage under the glass top of her coffee table in her new apartment. So she was not distraught. She was not struggling. We were having a fantastic time. There's absolutely no chance of that. Um, Second, did she fall off? No. Amy, when I first got on the boat, when we all first got on the boat, we got to our room. The first thing I did is walk out onto the balcony, and she trailed behind me. I leaned over the rail. We're on the 8th story up, and so you can look straight down to the water. And I was like, "Oh my God, Amy, look at this!" And she said, "Nope," and stood back by the sliding glass door. At no
Mm.
point during our time on that boat would she even get near the rail. So a couple of points here. She would not she would not have climbed on a table to throw up if she were feeling sick. She was tall enough to lean on the rail like I was if that was going to be the deal. She's not going to sit on the rail. She's not doing any of that crap. She's 5'6". The rail's, at least 42, maybe even 48 inches high. I don't know exactly how high the rails are on that boat. Center of gravity being much lower, you'd have to try to get off. Plus, the boat is not at sea. I know a lot of people may have that misconception that we're out in the middle of the ocean when this happened. We were at Curacao.
Oh, you were. Okay.
So that boat, so first of all, Aruba is 60 miles, 60 nautical miles from Curacao. It takes, by based on average speed of cruise ships being between 18 to 22 knots, somewhere between 2.5 to 3.5 hours to get from Aruba to Curacao. The boat left Aruba that night at 1 a.m. So let's just say it took 4 hours to get to Curacao. That boat has to come to a somewhat of a slow stop in front of the mouth of the canal and wait for a period of time. The harbor pilot, who we've spoken to, and he's explained this whole timeline to us, has to come out and meet the boat. In Curacao, it's mandated that the harbor pilot has to board the ship before he hooks it up to tow it through the canal.
Yeah.
So that takes a little bit of time. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes for the tugboat to hook up to the ship. Then, as you come through the canal, there's a floating pontoon bridge. I forget the name of it, but that has to be slowly opened. That takes some time. The entire docking process from the time the tugboat hooks up to the ship to the time the boat is back in position to be docked is anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes.
Mm.
When my dad was on the walking deck talking to a work colleague of his that morning when he first went up to search, he says the boat was sitting completely still, not moving back where we were docked. So the time frame that Amy disappeared, we were no further than right in front. I mean, we're talking, 100 feet from the shore. And with tides being as predictable as they are, and the search efforts that were made for days, they assured us that if she was in the water, they would have found something.
Yeah.
The only way she would have been in the water in the first place is if someone threw her in the water. But at that time in the morning, just before 6 a.m., like the sun was coming up. It wasn't dark. People were up exercising. There were people getting ready for their excursions of the day. There was activity, and I don't think anyone's going to throw anybody off the boat in front of people.
Yeah.
So, I don't
Someone
think,
would have seen something.
yeah, I don't think any of that is the case. I think Amy was removed down on the bottom of the ship, and there is some information that I have as to how they did it. That actually my our investigator has asked me not to share quite yet,
Mm.
because want anything to be compromised with his investigation that's ongoing.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want that. Can you say did that happen there at that port?
I believe so. I don't know. I believe so.
Okay.
Um, so there was a lot of activity on the backside of that ship. I'll say that that was on the water side, not on the side where people disembark. I don't think she was taken off via gangway. The taxi driver named Deshi, who unfortunately has since passed, not only was one of the eyewitnesses that contacted us early on saying that Amy came to his cab asking where a phone was. Um, and a part of his testimony is interesting, a fact that he includes. So, this taxi driver named Deshi says that Amy came up to his cab early that morning and was asking where the nearest phone was. So, and there were pay phones back then. You don't see them anymore, but he pointed to where the phones were, and he said she looked at the phones and went the opposite direction. Now, that's not something that makes sense. And if you're trying to blow smoke and make up a story, that's not really a detail that I think you would add if you were telling that story. It's just my opinion. I find it to be an interesting detail that he gave. He
Well, and
sus
it's probably he probably remembered it because it was so odd.
yeah,
Like that's something you would remember. Like, I wonder why she didn't go use the phone.
yeah. And the reason why I suspect that she was taken off on that island is because when we went back down to Curacao to do our first initial search after we kind of recoupled or gathered ourselves and got back down there at the hotel. My dad and I are standing out after the press conference in the valet area, right out in front of the hotel. And he walks up to us and says, "Excuse me," to my dad, "are you the father of the missing girl?" And my dad says, "Yes, I am." And he walks up very close to us and not whispering, but quietly tells us, and in my recollection, very sincerely, he said, "I want you to know something." He said, "Your daughter did not fall from that ship. Your daughter did not jump from that ship. She's on this island, and I hope you can find her." He told us to check three specific places. And he said, when you go there, don't make a scene, observe, and, good luck, basically. So
Hmm.
we think that potentially he was involved in the trafficking where perhaps they put her in his taxi. He drove her to one of these places, kind of halfway grew a conscience and wanted to help us, but didn't want to out himself as being involved in it potentially. So, yeah, I do believe she was initially taken off on Curacao.
Wow. Okay. So, to get the people that haven't seen it caught up, your dad reported her missing, asked for an announcement to be made. They didn't make an announcement because it was early. They didn't want to wake people up, but then they did make an announcement a little while later. And then people start to get off the boat to go do their excursions and explore. Did they do a mandatory evacuation of everybody off?
No.
No.
So first of all, just to correct one thing you said, the announcement. So first thing we did was beg them to not let people off.
Right.
Don't let people off. We don't want, anybody to be able to get off and, potentially if they have her or whatever. They refused that. They let people off anyway. We asked them to make an announcement that that she was missing and we couldn't find her daughter. They first refused. And then a little bit later, they made an announcement that simply said, "Amy Bradley, please contact the purser's desk."
Mm.
And that was repeated every so often, still not to make anybody aware that she was missing. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then so people are coming and going, and that's when they told you that they told all the crew members to search their own cabins for her.
Well, the chief security's report says that they did an initial search after, and this is after they told us they had searched everything thoroughly, every nook and cranny, quote unquote. In his report, it states that they searched public areas and restrooms and such. No passenger cabins. We've never had any passengers on that ship contact us that told us that anyone searched their rooms. We later found that the crew was responsible for searching their own quarters. Um, you know, and if you think about the cruise industry and the amount of drugs that come from South America through those islands, how do you think they move a lot of them? And what types of people or who out of the people on that boat are involved in that operation? It's
Yeah.
crew. So you don't have the people that are involved in all of the criminal activity that go on these ships searching their own quarters.
And that I was thinking about that, Brad, as I'm watching the series. If I were in your shoes, that you are in international waters or even a different foreign country at that point, and the cruise ship does not want word to get out that something could be bad. That costs them money and it makes them look bad. I mean, so, and a lot of times they're people that aren't, they're different nationalities, so it's might be hard to communicate. I mean, were you running into that where you felt like the cruise line was giving you the runaround?
100%. 100%. They were not, in my opinion, I'll say, interested in helping us. They were interested in limiting their liability. And so, at no point, well, I will say, when the captain told us that they had done an entire search of the boat, unfortunately, we took him at his word. We later discovered that what we were told wasn't true. And an announcement wasn't made and flyers weren't handed out until at least 48 hours later. I think they did eventually do what they call a Charlie drill, but it would, a couple of days had passed. So I think it was a little too late, and you know, uh, purposeful or negligent, or you decide. I don't know.
It was a Carnival cruise.
No, it's not, and I'm not legally allowed to say
Oh,
uh,
okay.
their name because they'll sue us.
Okay. It was not a Carnival cruise. I want to be sure that Carnival doesn't,
Correct.
say
That's-
that. So, did the series say the name?
I believe I think so. I'm
Okay.
not actually. I've watched it one time, um, you know, 3 weeks ago now, and I don't know if that's a fact or not, but I'm assuming so.
Okay. So the everybody gets off the boat, and then was it one of those that they left? It was only one day at that particular port.
Yeah, there was not like an overnight there. So I think we got off the boat at the recommendation of the ship's captain on Curacao because he explained to us obviously there was an ongoing search in the water. We didn't have any idea what was going on, and they assured us that a complete search of the ship had been done. So we agreed that yes, if her body were to have been found in the water, we would want to be there. So the president of my dad's company and his wife got off the boat with us. I think it was roughly 5 p.m. It was still light, and we stood there along the canal at the hotel that um, I don't remember who got it. I guess the president of my dad's company got us the room, and we watched that boat leave on time, on schedule.
Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine that
Yeah.
that you're on vacation and this happens and you're there. And where do you even go? Did you get help there on the island?
Not at that time. So at that time, you have to imagine, the scene. We can't, we can't eat. We can't stop crying. My dad had gotten, to the point where he was vomiting blood. My mom was in a fetal position on the bed. We're sitting in the room. We're contacting family back in Virginia to, talk to them and tell them what was happening. My mom and my dad were trying to get my uncle to solicit the help in getting the FBI on board because without us pushing for that, that certainly wouldn't have happened. That boat, as you've seen the cruise director, the now infamous cruise director, say that cruises go on, life goes on. You gotta keep entertaining your customers. You can't just stop it because some girl goes missing.
Right.
Yeah, but so that night, the only thing that happened is we ended up. My mom requested a priest to come to the room.
Mm.
President of my dad's company tried to facilitate that request, and they were unable to find the any priests that were available. Who ended up showing up to our room were two officers who introduced themselves from the Scientology ship called the Free Winds, which is based in Curacao, and they proceeded to do a lot of strange things and ask a lot of strange questions. And my dad finally asked them to leave. But the next day, we were contacted by, I guess, the harbor police or whoever it was to let us know that she was not found. And we got on a plane and flew to St. Martin, where the boat was heading. And when we got to St. Martin, we caught a tender or a ferry out to the cruise ship to get back on.
And you finished out the cruise.
No, no.
No.
So, when we got back on, the ship's attorneys were front and center. Um,
Mm.
Interpol was involved, and the FBI, I'm not sure had boarded at that time yet, but there were some agents that were from the field office in St. Thomas that eventually got on the boat. Everybody went through individual questioning and interviews, during which, with the FBI, those attorneys sat in on. which I understand is not proper or probably very legal.
The attorneys from the cruise company.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Sat in on the duration of the FBI interviews or the Interpol interviews. I don't really remember which, but we ended up, and that's when I explained to you we continued to talk to people, my parents' work associates. We're looking around, we're trying to retrace steps. We're a mess. We can't sleep. We can't eat. We don't know what the hell we're doing. And then at some point, my dad's boss was recommended that he charter us a private jet from St. Thomas back to Chesterfield to be with our family and get our stuff together. And because he was afraid that if we ended up at the end of the cruise, it would have been somewhat of a spectacle with media or whatever. So he didn't want us to be put in that situation. So we actually left before the boat left St. Thomas
Okay.
that day.
And by that point, had media picked it up?
I don't know. I mean, I think certainly in our hometown they did.
Right.
Whether people in San Juan had gotten word and were sitting there waiting, or I don't know what happened there. Um, yeah,
Right. Let me ask you about the part of the series where it there's a woman that looks like your sister who
yeah,
appears on a sex website, and
yeah.
it appears she's being sex trafficked. What's your thoughts about that theory?
You know, there are several pictures that it's like, oh my God, that is, you look at the picture, you compare it to other pictures. The FBI told us after their thorough analysis, however they do that, that they thought it was a high probability it was Amy. Um, and Yeah, we don't know. We searched for that person, Jazz, spelled JAS. We searched for her. We tried to have private investigators set up, to book time with her at all these different websites you could go to and all these different adult spots and different places, and years and years and years worth of trying to find this girl. And we were, obviously never able to. But we found recently there's been some stuff on TikTok and people doing a lot of photo alterations and like different ways that you can mess with the pictures and change the exposure and the light and all that stuff. There's been some evidence of what's called digital noise that is located on those photos right over top of where Amy's tattoos are, specifically in two areas. So we're in the process of seeing if there's any way or anyone that can remove that, alteration to the photo. But yeah, we don't know for sure with any certainty that that was her or is her. But yeah, it's really close. In 27 years, it's the only pictures that I've seen out of the hundreds or thousands that have been sent to us asking if, is this Amy? Is this Amy? Is this Amy? That you look at and you're like, man, I mean, the eyes, she had what's called exotropia of one eye. And so one eye is straight and one eye kind of is a little bit um, looking away. And that was the same. The nose is the same. The mouth, the teeth are the same. The hairline's the same. The ears are the same angle and the same length. And I mean, they did all kinds of different ways to analyze the photo. And again, they told us they thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, which I was expecting them to say, nope, they ruled it out. But the fact they said it was her.
Yeah.
You mentioned that your parents met with the FBI a few days ago. Where does the case stand right now?
I mean, it's open, but again, I don't think anything's happening. I honestly don't. I don't think anything's been happening for a long, long time, and that's why we're reaching out through social media. We're going through certain legislative channels to try and get people's attention to renew their focus, reinvestigate, get some new eyes and new agents on the case who um, actually care to do what's necessary in order to get to the bottom of where Amy is, if she's out there and still alive, what happened, who's responsible, hold them accountable. And again, I've said in a few interviews, if the only thing, if we get none of that out of this entire experience, and the only thing that comes from it is some sort of change legislatively or through treaties or however it needs to happen, where our authorities, or any other country's authorities for that matter, have jurisdictional authority to investigate a potential suspect or a crime in a different country without being blocked by international waters or the fact that they're a sovereign country. I think as it stands right now, the FBI say they can't re-interview Yellow unless he agrees to it. Now, I think that changes if the Grenadian government works with our government to make something happen in that regard. But American citizens need to understand you're not safe when you leave this country. And you know, good luck if something happens to you. The FBI, in my opinion, doesn't work like you see on TVs and movies, TV and movie shows. It's very disappointing and frustrating what our experience has been.
Yeah, the other aspect that I found interesting in the series is the website where they track how many or where people come from, the data, and that there was a lot of activity, particularly was it on Christmas or around holidays from the island?
Yeah, it was Christmas, my mom's birthday, Thanksgiving. There was an IP address that spent time on a page that we had designed specifically for Amy to look at and find if she was there, with certain pictures, special moments, different things. And this whoever this person was that was looking would sit on the site for 20, 30 minutes, I think, at a time, and look at these pictures. So before the show came out, I think it was estimated that monthly around the world we'd get anywhere from 300,000 or 400,000 hits to the site, including duplicates and all that kind of stuff. And within days after the show coming out, there were 16 million hits to the site.
Wow.
So there's a lot of effort that has been made to filter those down and eliminate duplicates and isolate them by different areas and different countries and different, whatever. But, I've actually, not able to share any specific information about the latest information that we're working on. We just, I don't want to, compromise
Right.
anything that's ongoing. So I know a lot of people are interested in that one particular aspect of the story, and it's just not something I can share.
Can you say, Brad, if are you hopeful? I mean, are you getting fresh leads, fresh takes? I
Yeah,
mean, has the show kind of reinvigorated everything?
absolutely. I mean, that Ari Mark and Phil Lott did an amazing job. I mean, people are giving them crap because they didn't include certain things, and obviously 27 years worth of information and details are pretty hard to get into 3 episodes. So they have revitalized her name around the world. They've brought interest back into her story. And yeah, we've never stopped hoping. We've never run out of hope. That's the one and only good thing that comes from not knowing, is that ability to continue to hope. I know I've often wondered if it's worse to get bad news and have closure and have things finalized, or whether it's worse to not know and live for 27 years with that. I don't know, but yeah, the hope is renewed. There is some excitement. We do have new leads. A lot of people around the world have come to us with ideas we've never thought of, and things to think about. And have you done this? And have you checked this? And it's been very helpful. There are certain leads that we've gotten that are credible enough that we have to follow them down and rule them out, and in or out as far as their significance, or whether there's any truth to them. So there's a lot of things that are going on. It's a sad commentary that My family is being accused of trying to make money off of this story. Um, there is a GoFundMe that a dear family friend of ours set up for us because they know that my parents have exhausted their retirement and their savings over the years on because anytime anything happens, we do it and things aren't free. And neither are these things that we're doing now. And we just don't have the money to do it. So people can, accuse us of whatever they want, but we're asking for any help, $1, $5, um, to help us raise the funds that are going to be necessary to continue this effort. Because it's just not there.
Yeah, and we'll put up the GoFundMe. I know I have seen some of the flack you're getting and your family's getting, and I mean the trolls can be horrible. Is
Uh,
there any other thing, Brad, that you want to clear up or clarify about any rumors or untruth out there, or anything you want the public to know?
no, you got 4 hours left.
Right, right, yeah.
There's
Any
plenty.
main ones? Anything that just drives you nuts that you're like, this isn't the case?
Yeah, there's all this talk about my family perjuring ourselves in court when the lawsuit that we brought against the company was dismissed. Um, there's no truth to that. The case was dismissed on a technicality, and in my opinion, I think the fix was in very early on in that situation. What happened was we brought a case for negligence, and the attorneys that were brought to us down in Miami to help us recommended that it would be a much stronger case to also include a wrongful death suit. Now, we maintained she was alive, but of course, we didn't know. And one of the things that's necessary if so we went along with it. We're not lawyers. We don't know what we're doing. We trusted that they were doing what was the right thing to do. And in order to bring or add a wrongful death suit to the case, we had to file for a certificate of death. So people are saying, well, why the hell would declare her dead if you think she's still alive? And they're calling us, how that side of the internet is.
Right.
Way, during depositions, I think I was deposed for, 13 and a half or maybe even 18 and a half hours. I don't know. It was a lot over a couple of days. And at the time, this was, and I'd have to look back exactly when, it's probably a year after her disappearance. There was a lot of stuff that had happened. There was hundreds of, purported sightings, just like we're getting now. I mean, we get pictures all day long that aren't even close, even though we appreciate people trying to help and the effort that they're making to make sure, because they don't know. And, there'd be people saying that I saw Amy working at a car wash in Topeka, Kansas.
Yeah.
Saw Amy sitting at a Hardee's last night in Arizona. And this went on and on and on and on and on. And they were looked into, they were found not to be credible, and they were not pertinent to the case. Now, because we didn't include every single eyewitness, which would, if we did include those, they would go against what we thought, that she was taken against her will and she wasn't living freely somewhere of her own volition. And so they claimed that, I guess their attorneys claimed that we defrauded the court. The case was dismissed on that technicality before it ever got to court. There was never any perjury. People just don't know what they're talking about, and it's frustrating for sure. Um, but I guess, the biggest message is to return to center here. I spent these past 3 weeks answering every question that came through social media individually. And I, spend 10, 12 hours a day on the phone, wrecking my self, trying to make sure that everybody knew all the details. And the
Right.
details are important. Um, but the details are not what are going to find Amy. Like I said before, somebody knows something. And I think multiple people know something. And we're pleading and imploring these people to come forward and help us. 27 years is long enough. And enough time has passed. Please help Amy. Please come forward. please, that one person is all we need. Um, we're trying to get outreach around these islands on social media. We have a project Miata, of Amy's car that we've kept all these years in the ground. There's an effort to contact your elected officials, state, local, federal, and ask and demand their attention and renewed focus and reinvestigation into this case. I'm awful afraid, as has happened many times in the past, that the attention will die down and the dust will settle and the news cycle will change and something will happen and everybody's attention and focus shifts to the next. And there we are again.
Right.
So I would ask people to please not give up on Amy, not give up on trying to help us and, um, help us uh, find her, help us bring who's responsible for this to justice, help us change the laws in this country and between our country and other countries so that when one of you goes missing, our authorities have the capability to do something about it.
Right. Brad, thank you very much. What's the website that people can visit?
Website is amybradleyismissing.com. The
Okay.
email line is amybradleyismissing@gmail.com. The tip line to leave voicemails is 804 789 4Amy, which is 789-4269. Again, you mentioned the GoFundMe. We're asking any amount that you can help us with. We're going to need it. There's a lot of expense going on right now, and the GoFundMe funds are just over like $20,000. That's not going to go very far.
Yeah.
Uh, so we're just asking for help, and I'm trying to reach a number of people. Kim Kardashian, I saw on her Instagram, is pleading for her followers to help find Amy. I've not yet been able to elicit any response from her. We're trying to get in touch. Tim Tebow and the Tebow Foundation is huge against trafficking, and it's one of his biggest platforms. I've sent messages. I'm trying to get in touch with him. Um, Anyone that can think of anyone that can help us or give us some type of resource to make something happen, is what we're asking for.
Yeah. Brad, I wish you all the best, and I hope that next time we speak, there's good news and good developments. And I want to continue to stay on it. I know I'm in Idaho, but we have people that watch all over the world. And thank you very much for making time for it. I can't imagine the exhaustion level where you're like, oh, one more interview or one more thing. You probably want to take a little break, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
And this is the website where you can go on and learn more about the case, see photos of Amy. Here is the GoFundMe page if you want to donate to the family and help in the investigation. Again, if you have questions about this case that maybe I can answer or I can do some research, or even maybe we can have Brad back on, send them questions at eastidahonews.com. We will compile those and hopefully we can do a follow-up Courtroom Insider with Brad Bradley. I appreciate him making time to talk with us. And I want to shout out newspapers.com. They are our sponsor of Courtroom Insider, and you can go on newspapers.com and read so many more details about this case. Back from when Amy Bradley disappeared, the original newspaper articles that were printed at the time, and the developments in the investigation throughout the years. As he mentioned, 27 years is a long time, a lot to cover. We didn't get to it all by far in this interview, and neither did the Netflix series. So thank you to newspapers.com for sponsoring us. Here is where you can find me. I am on Facebook, Instagram, X. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. That allows us to reach more people, and we can continue to bring you more and more episodes of Courtroom Insider. And also my family channel, Meetin' the Eatons, is where you can find us and a little bit more personal stuff on there. Thank you very much for watching. We will be back next week with more Courtroom Insiders. Working on them now, and I think you'll find them pretty interesting as we continue to talk about different crimes, different court cases, different things that have happened, and hopefully we can, with this audience, the strength of this incredible audience, maybe lead to Amy Bradley coming home, or at least help with that case. Appreciate you watching. Have a good weekend. I'm Nate Eaton. Take care.